All right. If you guys haven't been here before, welcome to Sector67. We're doing a sort of split online, not in line meetings. It works out pretty good, so we can get Dennis from home and people in person here.
What's that?
As seamlessly as it always should. So Dennis, go ahead and take it away. And, we can launch from here.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. The project that I'm sharing is my wife made this awesome steampunk purse with a addition that I made. And so let me share my screen, if that works. Cool, cool. So here's some pictures of it. We're going to a steampunk convention this weekend called TeslaCon, and this will hold her phone and, you know, other things, Vax card, stuff like that. And that's what it looks like with it closed. But the magic behind it has got a nice little LED display from a company called Evil Genius Labs. And that runs some animations with some cool color palettes. Here's another picture of it with some different colors. But then the fun part about it is it has this, the theme of the steampunk convention is War of the Worlds. And so there's a Martian invasion. And so the theory behind this and the compass rose is that it's a Martian detector. And so this next page is a video showing the animation. Oh, come on, Google Photos, load. This was literally just loaded like 10 minutes ago. So I don't know why it's not playing this time. I might just have to show you live on the actual device. Let me momentarily, oh, there it goes. So the directions on the compass rose indicate which way the aliens are with a nice little animation like that. So this was, let me stop that so it's not running. This was modeled in Fusion 360 using a sweep of a kind of curvy triangle thing and then these little pyramid things for the compass roses. And so that's in the rendering view. Oh, and then some little cutouts here for those bolts. And then milled out of brass using 4 tool paths. The first one was a facing tool path to bring the material down to the highest point, and then a 1/4 inch end mill to do some roughing, and then an 1/8 inch end mill to get a little bit closer, and then finally a 1/16 inch round end mill in order to do the surfacing. It came out fairly good. I only had 1 piece of brass, so I only had 1 chance, but if I had it to do again, I think I would make these steps a little bit smaller because there was still a tiny bit of stair stepping in the piece itself. And then there was some burrs that came off using a wire wheel on a grinder. And so if I go back to the camera and see where zoom went, that's what it looks like with the LEDs on. And you can kind of get an idea of the brass finish. If I turn it a little bit, occasionally the light will reflect off of it. The 4 bolts are actually the touch inputs, and then the software that runs the animation came with this display. We selected the color palettes so that we didn't have any that had reds in them. And then if you touch one of these bolts, there's a delay that we added, and then it runs the animation indicating which direction the Martians are. It's kind of overexposed there, but yeah. So I think it turned out pretty well, and the brass matches the other brass stuff on here. She didn't want it cleaned up and all shiny. She kind of wanted an aged look to it. So pretty happy with it. My first project out of brass. It seems to machine pretty much the same as aluminum, as far as I can tell. And then it's all hidden behind a, that's the front you were just looking at. It's all hidden behind a panel here that hides all of the hot glue and the battery pack that runs the whole thing. So it's a fun project. Any questions?
actually find Martians?
Sorry?
Try to get a little louder.
Okay. What would you do if you actually found the Martian?
Oh, I
Martian
actually, I hope they have a panel on that, like what we're supposed to do when we find the Martians, because I actually don't know the answer to that.
So the thing I chatted, which you probably missed, is yeah, if you zoom in on that toolpath you've got up now on your screen share, can you show people what that actually is? Because I think it looks like all it is a rendering, but it's actually not. That's tens of thousands of lines of toolpath on your
Yeah.
right there.
So like if I select the facing one, the blue lines are all cutting passes. And because this is kind of a desktop mill, I have to take small bites. So I think these are 0.3 millimeter step downs. If this was a giant Tormach, you would just go right through this and take a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch of brass all at once. But on this thing, it goes back and forth. And that takes my 1/4 inch stock down to, looks like it's about 1/8 of an inch. And then the next tool path is that same 1/4 inch end mill, but running around, chopping out everything that it can. If you turn off these paths, you can see the simulator showing the remaining material, and it's a little, scalped because these are 0.2 millimeter step downs, and it's a 1/4 inch mill. And then if you go to the 1/8 inch one, you can see, I think I changed the step down to maybe a little bit smaller, and it's a finer mill. And then finally, the last pass is kind of this spiral using a ball end mill. And so it's able to round those off pretty significantly. Is it not showing here?
Your left, the eyeball, hit the visibility.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Maybe. I think you may have turned off the toolpath, so it might not. Yeah, you might have to resimulate or something, but that's all right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I probably have to regenerate the toolpaths, which takes it a long time. So we won't do that.
All I was getting at was when you had it up on when you're talking about it, it looked like it was just this kind of view, but it's actually, it's like the gajillion cuts to make the cutout. But
exactly, yeah. You can see the
Matt's saying I think your setup 2's got to get turned on, so that eyeball up in setup 2 might have to go too. Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, well, you get an idea.
Yeah.
Then the nice thing is Fusion actually, simulates this, so you have an idea of how it's doing. And that was way past actual size. Actual size is about yay big. So I cut it out of MDF first to make sure it was going to mostly work, and then the only piece of brass I had got cut, so it worked out fairly well. I'm glad we didn't have to rush find another piece of brass.
Is there an intermediate step between Fusion and your machine that you have to do, or is it just like plugging in a printer and it just goes?
Fusion exports the G code, and then I bring that into the software for the mill, and it takes it from there. So it actually also has a simulator that shows you, how the machine's going to be moving around, and you can kind of verify that it's all going to work right. It also, that software is where, you zero the tool and it knows where the workpiece is so that it can offset the G code to correctly align with reality. I always put the origin in this corner, and so that's the one that it does some, if it's metal, it can do an inductive or conductive find of the edges, or you can manually find those. So really no step between Fusion and the mill other than the mill software. And then this is Evil Genius Labs, the Fibonacci 64 micro. It's 64 LEDs arranged in a Fermat spiral, I think it's called. So it's a unwinding curve. And then they've got some nice software that runs on it, but it's yeah, we changed the colors. They would cycle through different things, but we wanted red, and we added the delay to it as well. They'll sell you just the LEDs, or they'll sell it to you with a Adafruit QT Pi on the back, which I got on there, and then you can program that using the Arduino environment. So turns out to be a nice little piece. There's actually a bigger one over on my wall that's like 7 inches in diameter, and I think 256 LEDs, just running different patterns. I think they have that up in their products page here somewhere. Is it this one? Yeah, so you can tell by the fingers there how much bigger that unit is. A lot more LEDs. So that was a fun build, and hopefully we'll find some Martians. Thanks, Chris, for letting me go first so I can have my work meeting.
Yeah, I'm sure you're super pumped to hit the work meeting, so.
I'll have you in my other ear though, so.
That won't be too bad. Awesome. Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Jim, I think you're up next.
So, yes, I have some, and I'll email you a couple more.
I saw that. Yeah, one second, I'll get a screen share on here.
If you can get, just the ones on the drive right now. Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
Let's scroll through those.
yeah, one second. Just
This is totally more primitive than the earlier presentation.
So where do you want to be on your,
Right back there. There.
this one?
Okay, yeah.
All right, so you gotta come up here then.
Well, I'll sit down.
Yeah, I know. Good.
Where's the second stand?
Right here. One second, Mike.
I'm Jim Miller. I am done my 2 years. But anyway, I decided this is something I've been working for the last 6 months on. And we live on the east side of Madison, which is known for not having garages really. That sliding glass door was the old tuck under carriage house, which became an apartment. So you're looking at the challenge was there's a bike, except that that bike will be an electric bike. And then there's 3 trash bins. And so the challenge was, design program was to, can you create an enclosure that can hold all of that cluttered, things and then make it all still function for all users. And, one is to keep a bike securely on the ground level. So East Side also has some topography. So our main floor is up 1 level above the lower level. And I'm 66 years old, so it's hard for me to carry an electric bike up steps. So the idea was in this new driveway, you can see we added paver strips. We took out the concrete, we made half grass, half pavers. And now I had the surface to actually build this on. So then what do? Okay, so I'm just going to go through.
So here's your, if you just use the arrows, you can go left to
Yeah.
right.
I did not put them in the correct order. Okay. So anyway, this whole thing started with the framework, which the framework was presented about a year ago. And okay, so you may remember this from a year and a half ago, was the idea of a freestanding art display. So you didn't have to engage the walls, you could just float it in the space. So Adam, I don't know his last name, but the carpenter, Finnish carpenter, helped me with taking Western red cedar 2x2 select and converting it into a series of frames.
Go back.
Okay, yeah. So that was the framework concept, and being that lumber prices had tripled in the last 6 months, I decided, oh, I already have these frames. How can I make the frames become part of this bicycle storage system? Okay, so there you go. What I did was I laid them on their sides and put 2 together. And here's how the thing works, okay? That is a picture from the end. So instead of standing up, they are now, it's laying down. And that little door is the bike storage door and has a lock on it. So I can just push that bike. This is an e-bike. I actually brought an e-bike up. There's the e-bike going in behind the trash. E-bike sticking out, e-bike. Oh, what was that? Holy cow, that's my son's artwork. Okay.
Subtle advertising.
Yeah, that'll be at the art show. Anyway, so then today I was talking with Jim Rasmussen about, and Chris. Well, so my problem is my users, my client, which is my wife and my son, we're like, how do we put stuff into the trash containers? So one of the legs flips up, and that is a corrugated fiberglass. Okay.
Marcus, mute.
Extremely lightweight. So that's good. Okay. Why I used corrugated fiberglass was it was a relatively inexpensive material. It was translucent and pretty impervious to water. So it forms the roof canopy for this thing. Now that is shown with the roof tilted up, and actually you'll see it's in the down position there, and then the front face folds down, and then you can pull all the bins out, take them to the curb. So that was the challenge now, is to make that all easy to do. So we'll go back to, okay, oh, I was just gonna, there's the framework actually in the Garver Mill during a blood drive. Okay, so art gallery in a Red Cross blood drive. It's a great idea. I'm just going to go back to, there you go. So the door and the overall proportion of the art frame, the framework, is the golden mean rectangle. Now it turns out that it happens to fit perfectly 3 garbage bins and a bicycle without, so I think I had one more picture. There's somehow I might have attached the wrong picture there. So imagine that bike inside, it all fits. And it fits within about an inch of clearance between everything all the way across. That was a miracle, actually. But we're still working on trying to get the lid to be able to just be a touch and lift, so that and just anyone can lift the lid and then put trash inside. So this is a kind of tongue-in-cheek. This is a concept of art to trash. And it fits the e-bike, which is great. And then I'm going to put a steel channel running back into this thing so that I can just put it on a track and just push the bike, and the bike will be canted, inclined, so that when you open the door, the bike just comes out. So there you go. That is, it's so far, the budget is about, it's hard to believe, $500. That seems like a lot for a little thing like this, but I'll tell you, OSB, a sheet of OSB is now like 20 bucks. I mean, between 15 and 20. I mean, it was 20, it's now 15. So you just buying material for this ended up being more than I wanted to spend. So that's the topic of the bike storage enclosure with trash enclosure. Okay. And questions of any interest?
I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, a few of them. So the
Yes.
first question is, what's to prevent someone from opening the front, taking out the garbage cans and having access to your bike?
Those will need to be made lockable as well. But that's a good point, is security. The whole idea was to have a space, since it turns out e-bikes actually have locking systems where you can lock it internally, the bike won't move. However, they're worth $2,500, so people might just pick them up and throw them in a van. So the lid that closes the front, I just fold down right there. That connection, when that thing folds up, that too would be locked. And that's how I would secure. Then the thing is, it's half-inch OSB, honestly. If you want to, hit it with an axe, you could destroy it. But the nice thing is that the trash enclosure makes it heavier. It's really heavy with that stuff inside. So the idea that someone could take the whole box, is not a probability. There's no, so that security of the bike was another program element in this design. Any other questions?
So my second question is, what happens when you have a foot of snow? It seems like that would add a lot of weight to the top, and then it would also make it difficult to get the front open so you can get the cans out.
Well,
Who bikes in the winter, Bob? Come on now.
No, I'm talking about getting the cans out. The bike can
Oh,
stay
yes.
where it is.
Okay, so now think about it. This is why it's being presented. It's a project in process. The users currently object to the front folding door, what we'll call what do they call those in castles?
Drawbridge.
The drawbridge concept. It just happened to fit the framework better, but to your point, side rolling doors would be more practical. So I am considering transforming this panel into, 2 side rolling doors. So that's a good point. And then the roof, as far as snow load, will be designed to carry the 40 pounds per square foot that's required. It's not a big load. I mean, it does over time, create if you don't clear the top off, I mean, let's just say, what is the one snowfall event, whatever, 40 pounds per square foot. That's what you design for. So this is not a structure because it's not attached to the ground. Okay. Nor am I. I'm ungrounded. This, it's interesting, the city of Madison, what defines the structure is it has to be attached to the ground, has to be more than 6 feet high. A fence is by nature less than 6 feet high. If it has a roof, then again, it's not attached to the ground. This is essentially a box in the driveway is what it is. So I, did not go for the building permit because it is not attached to the ground. It's a portable object.
Any other questions?
Yeah. I'll try to speed along here.
I have one.
Yes.
What dictated your choice of materials and on different sides of we'll call it a structure, but let's call it, but of the house, right? I saw there was some kind of more plasticky material. I see there's some wood in there, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, so the lattice is what the final look will be. So if I go back to that's OSB, that's painted OSB at this point. That will be have an infill similar to that. So it'll be a lattice infilled inside of the frame. All the wood I cut here, it was great using the table saw and the chop saw.
Your frame is cedar, so that's gonna last forever.
Okay, so that's also, everything's Western red cedar. The infill panels, people here, we talked amongst ourselves regarding what's the best and most economical performance, meets the requirements to give it a shear resistance, because this whole thing wants to just wrap. And so it needs, and it turns out that OSB is probably the most economical material. So I didn't emphasize enough that this is on a budget. So, okay, anyway, that is that project. And then I just want to go back to this to talk about the gallery night. The idea, I have 4 of these frames, is to set them up, I believe, outside and create kind of a glowing advertisement by illuminating some pretty bright artwork. So when people look down the block, they go, oh, that must be another gallery. So the idea is to get some fairly tight LED flashlights and illuminate the artwork from about 25 feet back, but those tight beams. So it's literally glowing objects, art objects. And then people can then come in. I don't know if you're going to have the door open and all.
We're gonna try to keep everything outside. It's all right.
Okay. So this will give us a little bit of a framework that people can walk around and, see art. There's probably 3 panels of those 4 by 4 feet that are unassigned. I have some of my own small watercolor paintings, but if anyone has drawings or any artwork they want to pin up, there'll be pinnable surfaces, up to 12 would be 48 square feet. 48 square feet of open display area. I certainly can fill it all. I mean, you saw that artwork. It's pretty incredible. So that's kind of what will be on parts of the framework. And then I might try to get the letters out, but the art in place was was called photo optic art concept, where you make out the message when you're far enough away to actually see all of the words lining up. So I have other images of that in place where it actually worked perfectly, but no one got that but me.
So gallery nights, it's citywide gallery nights next Thursday. So where our stop is from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. So the old shop was next to the art studios, and so we would inadvertently get people coming by. Where we are now, we're situated right between Goodman Center and Communication up on Milwaukee Street. So
Okay.
there's kind of like a logical pathway, and we should be right on it. So I'll be curious to see whether we get anybody or not, or who knows what. So anyway, if anybody has anything that they want to show or demonstrate or do or anything otherwise, it's next Thursday, 5 to 9ish. So we're gonna try to just set everything up to be outside.
Yeah, so the frameworks will give us surface to display on. And we could have some tables and some chairs.
Yeah, we
maybe.
can set up.
And I don't know about any food stuffs or.
Yeah, you want to apply all the art viewers. with the
Yeah, you want to get them loosened up, get their wallets out.
All right, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
I'm gonna. You can stay by.
I'm gonna pull it up.
So, let's see what we got next. I can go next, and then I got Scott. Is anybody else that's planning to present anything tonight? What's next, Scott? All right. So let me share my. Jim, you gonna co-present or? Yeah, you're right up here, second credit.
What up, you, Jim? Come on, join the rest of us.
I think Aaron considered there for the presentation as sort of like a model.
That could be good. So anyway, I put together a couple slides just to better explain. It's actually just mainly trying to share a picture, but benevolent dictator is required for eat or drink outside. and not everybody has a car, so we need a way to be able to consume things over the winter here. So the idea was to try and put together something that was cheap. The motivation to have it be indoors, but as safe as a decent mask. Opportunity to put together multiple of these without having to spend a lot of time putting it together. Make it cheap to build. Shouldn't cost very much. Hopefully it doesn't break the science. There's a theme here. Maybe Jim and I hear the relationship. So the deal was, Adam Gowning actually started this. He was cutting up a bunch of plywood, and Jim and I both spotted these frames sitting right in the wood shop. And we thought, well, we could take chloroplast, just the cheap corrugated plastic, and we'd be able to just bond it to the plywood. Use the plywood as a structure, so we wouldn't have to buy sheets of plywood, and then use the chloroplast as an infill, keep it inexpensive. The problem was we were worried about it being pretty flimsy. It's not transparent, and we got to thinking about other materials that were kind of floating around. We thought we'd go upstairs and check out the random door / patio door pile. And so I had bought from TJ, the scrap metal guy, a whole bunch of patio doors that were getting scrapped by normal glass. So TJ normally takes a hammer and smashes out all the glass, and then scraps the aluminum frames. And so I thought rather than turning these things into scrap, we would turn them into a box. And do that instead. The only thing I had to buy was a storm door. I couldn't find a picture of my storm doors, and while I was searching for stock photos, I found this one. I figured that would give you the idea anyway. So storm doors, and then essentially we put it together. So you've got 3 patio doors around the perimeter, a plywood base on a pallet, plywood ceiling, and then the next slide kind of explains how the airflow works. So this is my very fancy diagram. Make sure that it makes more sense as to what's going on. So inside the box, there is a recirculating fan. It's about 70 CFM. Conveniently enough, the box itself is 70 cubic feet, so we can turn over the air once per minute. So we get about 60 exchanges an hour through the recirculation fan. Then we have a much smaller exhaust fan going out the lid of the box, which is also filtered. Then there's a makeup air intake, which has got a filter on it. And so essentially what the system is doing is we're turning over the air inside as often as possible without being unreasonably noisy. And then we're exhausting a little bit of air so that we can keep the box under negative pressure. And so the idea of this upper exhaust filter is trying to hold the box under negative so that we can have a tiny bit of leakage, because we don't want the box to be positive, or else we're taking the person who's not masked air and putting it out into the shop. And so the idea is to make a free enough pathway for air intake to take place without invoking a lot of leakage. So we don't want much of a fan up here, given the proportionate sizes of the fan pictures. Hopefully that's clear. All joking aside, that's basically the idea. So those that are here can see it, but anybody online, this is, so essentially we've got a small desk surface, a chair, and then again, the idea was to try to minimize the volume, because the smaller the volume is, the faster you can turn over the air, and the better that we can keep that. So, any questions, Mr. Matt?
You look to live together for confessional?
So Matt wants to know if can we stick 2 together for confessional? You know, there's really not a lot of good sound transfer between them. So we could do like Bluetooth headset, but then you know you could do remote confessional.
Yeah, once you get inside there, you can't hear Chris yapping at all.
Exactly. It's a benefit or a detriment depending on your perspective.
So it is the silence.
It could be the cone of silence. Yeah, apparently there's a lot of Futurama references to be made here.
Will that go outside? That's inside.
That's to live inside. Yeah, so the idea is we've been just eating outside because it's been nice out. Just go out and hang out at picnic tables. The problem is winter's coming, and it will no longer be nice to sit outside. So I was trying to build something that would, like I say, make a safe environment, keep people isolated and happy. And if people want to use it to make phone calls or whatever, the long-term thing was you actually can use it as a telephone box, just like a regular co-working space. So the objective was to kind of make it multifunctional so that it actually had a long-term purpose. Not that I think we're climbing our way out of this anytime soon, but if we do, it'll be good. Jim?
Yeah, I think that you should, the title or the name of the device, you should put out to the sector to see who, we can come up with a better name.
Will it be Boxy McBoxface?
Could be the fishbowl,
Cone of silence.
Cone of Silence is a good one.
I think any pop culture reference is going to win over, but I could be wrong.
But yeah, because this is a good idea that allows us to be indoors. And we'll have to draw straws as to who
Well, scheduling, I just figure, you know, you chip in enough money and then maybe Jim will make us a big polycarbonate snap together box. Good. We were actually talking about doing that. The problem is sealing all the corners and it's also gets really expensive because polycarbonate is not cheap.
You have to hook up the export to outside somehow?
No, so sorry. So Matt wants to know, like, where does this exhaust port go? This exhaust returns to the room. So the exhaust is through a HEPA filter and the intake's through a HEPA filter. So the air exchange is filtered both directions, and then the internal recirculation is filtered. The idea is to knock down, and they're all HEPA, so they're 99.97% filtration. So that ostensibly, as long as they're working well, we should really be able to knock down any viral particulate or anything else in there. The only thing that you do have to do is wait a minute after you go in order for that recirculation fan to clear the air, because once it does one turnover, you're more than fine. And so that's about the only thing. And then the same thing when you go out, you should wait for a minute for it to have cleaned the air before you open the door. And again, this is overly safe, but we want to be overly safe because that's the goal. I don't think anybody wants to get sick. So no charcoal, but HEPA particulate wise, you know, I guess if you're really kicking it up, but we need to put charcoal on it, which would add back pressure. So
you're saying it's worth the box?
no relief. Yeah, no, it's just gonna recirculate. So could be a problem for you.
No mask is necessary in that space.
As long as it's run, as long as the fans are running. Yeah, it turned out it's been running the whole time in here, so it's very quiet. Just the other requirement is that it not be. Any other questions from the? All right, I feel my screen share here. I think Scott's gonna take over next. I don't even think Scott's gonna move. We can't even motivate him to get out of the chair. It's gonna be good. Yeah, 1 sec, Scott's gonna. Anybody, I'm just making sure nobody else got any to present besides Scott. Yeah, no, that's fine. You're good, Scott. You want to use the room mic or the?
One other thing, Chris.
Yep.
The word you say budget conscious rather than cheap.
Let's see, no, we're cheap. Yeah, we're definitely cheap. We're definitely not budget conscious. That's got very little to do with it. Cheapness is a primal instinct around here.
Value is what you're going for.
All right, my name's Scott. I'm a member here. I work on various things. You'll find me in the metal shop from time to time. And I wanted to share briefly about a project I did. Thought a fun COVID hobby to pick up would be lockpicking. And so I've been just pecking away at that. I don't know if you've seen like Lockpicking Lawyer on YouTube and all that, but it's a really interesting hacker mindset kind of a hobby. So I'm a rank amateur lockpicker, but my interest intersected with a need around here, which one of the great things we do is reclaim building materials, and we reclaimed a lot of doors over the years, a lot of them from commercial spaces. And so those doors typically will come with a lock set installed that we don't have a key for. And so a while back, Chris presented where I think you had drilled out a couple lock sets and replaced the core so that we could actually make a usable lockable door from that. And we still had one door back by the car bay that we didn't have a key for, that we just unlocked it manually as we needed to.
This is the installed exterior door.
Yes.
Which we didn't have a key for. Somebody did somewhere, but we didn't.
So you should be able to see, I'm going to just share some kind of conceptual pieces here. Like this is the commercial, it's a commercial Schlage lock set with a core. It's a removable core that's rekeyable. These are called interchangeable cores. And so they look like this, where the key goes in and the pins are there. And you'll notice that they actually have this pin coming out the side. So normally if you have a regular key, or if you can pick the lock open, you can extract the core and rekey it. Unfortunately, these commercial locks, you need something called a control key, which these are Schlage SC4, so it's a 6-pin lock. There's a 7th pin. You need an extra long control key to go in and unlock the door, and then also remove the lock set. And so from a picking perspective, it's a little bit of a challenge. So was an interesting thing I wanted to try to take on. And, you know, I won't go into the theory of lock picking here, but like the idea is you have a key with pins, and then a control key would be it has this extra little nub at the bottom there to enable you to insert it, and then you turn it like 15 degrees, and then you can extract the whole core. And so
The control key still has to be matched.
it also has to key, it has to be bitted properly to actually unlock the door as well. So what we needed was a control key that was keyed to the lock. So there's this process you can go through called decoding the lock, and that usually is quite a challenge, but there's been some new tools coming out in the locksmithing world, and I'll show this on camera here. This is what's called a Lishi 2-in-1 decoding and picking tool, and I'll pass this around the room as well. But normally lock picks, you have a tool to tension and you have a tool to move the pins of the lock. As you try to move these up until you reach the break point there, and you have enough tension that it stays there. And you just have to feel your way through it. This tool, it's actually got basically a map. It has the right nose to insert all the way into index, basically into the lock. And then you can move along and pick at each, where this little pointer is, it actually lines up with the pin. And so the benefit of that is you are on the movable pin with your pick, but also it has depth markings so that when you feel it, you can actually then know that pin is that depth. And this is specific to a Schlage SC4, and so if you have a number 4 pin, you know what that is. You can work your way down the line. You can pick the lock, and then if you can turn the cylinder, then you can really accurately decode what the lock is without ever having had a key. And so that's what I did for the back door. In fact, I didn't actually pick it with this, which takes a little more skill than what I have right now. I used a rake pick to rake it open, and I turned the cylinder slightly, and then I could put this back in and actually decode each pin. So I got what they call the bitting for the lock. I took that to Bill's keys. I said, can you cut me a control key for this lock from this code? He said, well, how did you get that? It's a little bit of I explained to him what I was doing. I'm like, yeah, I'm at Sector 67. We're kind of a hack. He's like, oh yeah, I know all about you guys. That's great. And so I had got a control key that really only needed to work once to get in and take that core out so that we could rekey it. But an interesting nuance with a lot of these commercial doors that we end up getting is that the keyways aren't necessarily standard for like a Schlage key. And so I just wanted to demonstrate that there's some variance in this. And in fact, this keyway is a controlled keyway as well. So I had to do some manual grinding. You'll see the point of that Lishi SC4 is actually ground down a little bit to fit the keyway. And the control key I had to also grind down to match the control keyway. But luckily, I guess the key blanks that Chris gets in bulk from Mexico are thin enough already that they have enough tolerance to just work in a control keyway as well. Either that or there are like superset keys that work in multiple keyways. And so the key that Chris has to unlock the front door and the side door also works in this control key.
Happens to fit a paid key that's not supposed to be available.
Yeah. So yeah, it's supposed to be controlled by contract to a certain limited vendor group, basically. So
Question about the pin length, because I used to rekey locks at the Home Depot back when architecture was.
yeah,
There was no architecture. That was 2008, 2012. But in any case, they come in 10, I think 1 through 10.
so yeah, 0 through 9 for
And
Schlage.
these little pins are varying lengths, 1 through 10. And that the key can be coded by that number sequence.
Yes.
And that what allows the cylinder to actually turn is that the length blanks are just right so that when they are flush with the cylinder can turn. That's why no other key can open that.
Yeah, that's
I
exactly
remember
right.
that. And then sometimes you have a what's called a long cylinder, because these other things are spring loaded. So once you pull the sheath off, that thing can just go like that.
Yeah,
So you have to be able to transfer it in. I mean, it's an interesting thing how the American key system evolved.
yeah.
I find what it is today.
I find it super fascinating as well. So then to wrap up my presentation tonight, Chris and I extracted the core using the control key. That did work. Cut to the decoded bitting, and we got the core out. We went through the process of rekeying the core. And since we didn't have a control key to put it back in with the new bitting, we'll get one of those eventually. We had a little bit of fancy logistics to do to get the core back into the door handle. But
to be totally clear, we reinstalled the thing. We have no means of removing it.
yeah, so now we have no actual way to get it back out. But we will cut it's one of my interests is to actually cut a control key. We've got an old key cutter, a duplicator, and you can use a technique where you have keys that are all zeros, all ones, all twos, all threes, and you just duplicate your way to a coded key. You can also get, like, in essence, kind of CNC or very, manual mill in essence for cutting key blanks, but ours will kind of do that, but
I've used the Tormach before to duplicate keys too. So.
yeah, but I was curious to play with this idea of creating a coded key from, in essence, duplicating your way to it. So that worked, and now we've got another door that Chris's key will open, and we don't have a way to remove the core if we need to yet, but it's continued experimentation. So, any questions on that?
Are you gonna pump your lockpicking YouTube channel? I mean, you don't have many millions to go to.
Yeah, no, I have no aspirations of creating a lockpicking channel. So, yeah.
This may be too general for your presentation, but looking at the diagram, it looks to me like the points on the key are not the thing that pushes up the tumblers.
That's right. It's the flats in between the points.
So do the corners get worn off of those little teeth at some point, and then they fall down farther? And
They do get worn, yeah. And in fact, this gap also gets worn because so cylinders can wear out eventually, or they get so loose and your key won't work necessarily very well.
Are these cylinders?
It's literally a cylinder, yeah. So if you look at like this, the key goes in and the pins are there and they go up in, and then it's literally a cylinder that turns when all the pins line up exactly even across the gap in the cylinder or not. It's quite an interesting thing. It's a
So why aren't the points the thing that pushes up the cylinder? Wouldn't that be easier? That's what I was thinking.
It wears out as a problem.
Yeah, I
You
would
wanna
think
buy a
the-
non-type patch?
the wear surface would be a lot
Why
smaller.
were the points at all? Why isn't it just-
Because they bump the pins, so the pins ride up and down so they don't bind.
Yeah, there's good animations
It's-
of it.
It's also partially from the old way of cutting keys wouldn't have allowed for that. That's why the new keys are laser cut, where they have a continuous CNC side mill profile. And those don't have points anymore. They have a rolling ball, essentially an 8-inch cutter.
I did bring this, or if you want to look at like this one, see a key in operation, that's just a clear lock. I've been using to practice picking as well. So you can see the pins move up and down over the bumps, and settle into, and you'll see them not lined up until the key is all the way in. Sorry for folks online. who don't have the experience.
And also, I don't know if it's mentioned, having those nice, having them rounded means it's actually, especially if it's not a perfect block. Where it's old and worn out. I'd imagine that would help.
Yeah.
Sliding in, if it's not, it can slide over, so it's getting stuck.
Yeah.
So the fun thing is if you have a control key, you can pull the cores of all the locks throughout. So the reason that this door was control key locked was so if the city had in this case, these door locks came from the city, and then an employee who kept their keys and didn't return them, they could rekey all the cores in like a matter of minutes. So they could go through the building, pull the cords out, rekey them, and then move on to the next cord, rekey it, and walk through the door and do it. Versus having to disassemble the door handle, pull the cylinder out like you do on your house. So that's my concept.
So the somewhat terrifying thing in a way, I mean, if you don't know anything about locks, you realize that things are way less secure in practice than what you actually think that they are. But these decoding lock picks mean that if you have really any time with a door, you could literally then get the bitting for the door and go cut a key to later come back and just open it with it. So, and it's like, I mean, I'm a terrible, terrible lock picker, and I was able to, in essence, do it for an SC4 door, and it worked perfectly fine the first time I tried. So that's, you know, there's your. It probably took me 15 minutes to like try to pick it with this by first, and then try to pick it with a regular lock pick and a tension bar, and then just to use the rake tool, and then that worked within about a minute. Chris has a bump lock system that it's very fast. I mean, a minute maybe. I don't know. It's one hit with a little pin. You know, so it's a rubber hammer, right?
It's actually funny. Kids are better than adults.
So the bump key wouldn't work.
No, the bump key worked fine. I had bumped the store before. The problem is the tool didn't exist to decode a lock. So even though I could unlock the cylinder, I couldn't pull the cylinder out because you can't get the last pin at the end.
When actually those tools that just on when come up with past them.
Yes. Yeah. It's better.
Sites have been following when those first came on. We're not sure.
Yeah, this was like $75, and I did get it from Lockpicking Lawyer because you know, his content's good. Probably a slight premium to pay the orders from him, but like.
I mean, that's about the price.
Yeah, it's not much.
Enough that I wouldn't go buy. It's hope to look really cool.
Yeah. So I do have an SC1 and SC4 also. The SC4 specially modified for control keyways now. If people want to play around with them, just to drop them on.
Was that 15 minutes you estimate? Was that including the research you did on how to pick locks?
No, that was just coming here. That I had already done my own home locks a bit.
Yeah, I guess like I'm curious. Like,
So if you wanted to, if you want to unlock a door and have no experience doing it, there's a thing called a bump key. And with a bump key and a hammer or literally your shoe, you can unlock a door in a few seconds. So typically the first try will work. So the catch is that you have to have a prepared key for a keyway. So normally everybody's house door is either quick set or a flag. So like everybody here has the same keys in their pocket. If you want to spend more money, you can buy keys that don't have regular keyways like that. And then you can also buy your own keyway. So like Schlag will sell you your own control keyway, which is what this was. It just happens to be that this control keyway overlaps with a regular key. So somebody at the city bought a control keyway that regular keys fit into, which is like that shouldn't be what they paid for. I'm sure they paid a fortune to own this keyway, and yet the keyway isn't secure at all. So it just happens for us, for our purposes, to work good because that means we can use a regular key on it. But if you had done this properly, like the university does, then you can't buy that key like at all. It's not available; it's only sold at the university of locksmiths. That said, if you have access to the key or literally a picture of the front of the key, you can make your own if you're motivated enough.
Oh yeah.
So like Dennis's mill could make keys with control keyways all day. The thing that he was talking about cutting brass, or you can just 3D print
Printed one, which that one it doesn't work. There must be something just slightly wrong with the spacing, but Chris's 3D printed keys. They do work otherwise.
There was this one talk at DEF CON. Well, first of all, they're talking about 3D printed keys as a step essentially, because they're talking about the Knox box. Knox is the fire box.
Yeah.
They disclosed it responsibly, thankfully, but they found a way to get into Knox boxes, which is serious because getting into a Knox box for a building needs to have access to the entire building. So the firefighter keys. So.
Anybody else have any questions? Or I guess anybody on Zoom have any other presentations that they didn't tell me about?
All right.
Where is the evolution of security locks? Because Jim here is working on an AI bird feeder lockout device. So the idea that they make cards or pays. The facial recognition, which we see in the science fiction movies. Again, they're not cheap, okay? Every door is about, just the wiring.
Yeah, they all, all that stuff already exists. You can have doors that unlock for you. You can have doors, the actual most secure ones are two-factor. So you hold your phone screen out and the phone would actually talk to the door to verify you, because you could biometric unlock your phone. You could hold your phone to a video camera and actually transfer data, or you could use RFID or whatever you want to do. But that would be probably the best way to make a lock. The bad news is that it's still less secure than the window next to the door. So the reality is, like, none of this actually matters, because if somebody really wants to get through the wall, you as an architect know, right? It's styrofoam and siding. You can just smash your way through it in a layer of drywall.
Yeah, some like police say like 1%, less than 1% of break-ins are like locked.
All right, I'm gonna kill off the Zoom here. So thanks everybody for joining us.